So I'm Kelly from our studio. I'm a solutions engineer at our studio, and I spoke yesterday on a similar topic, and today I'll be finishing my talk in its second part. So I'm talking about automating the delivery of reproducible data products in R, and the data product that I'll be talking about today is a Shiny application, but this paradigm can be used for various different types of content. So our Markdown documents, Plumber APIs, even eventually we hope Jupyter notebooks. So extending the R universe to other types of data science products. As a solutions engineer at our studio, I get to do some really cool stuff. I get to work with our customers and I get to work with our engineering teams. Specifically, I'm paired with the RStudio Connect engineering team. So I'll be demoing later on in this talk a new feature in RStudio Connect. But if you don't have Connect and you're never going to have Connect, don't worry, because the overarching themes that I'll be talking about today really apply to various different types of Shiny application deployment and release patterns. So there. So as a solutions engineer, I consider myself an analytic administrator in R. This is kind of my background, how I got really excited about RStudio's server products. And we call the R admin, or the analytic administrator, any kind of data scientist who within their organization has decided to take on this role of helping the rest of their team manage this analytic infrastructure that they're working inside of. So even if everybody's on local machines, or if you have server products, or you're using Docker containers, or you're in the cloud, you usually will have someone, maybe someone from IT, maybe someone on your team, maybe this person is you, who helps onboard these new tools, helps your team deploy solutions, supports these standards, and helps bring R, make R a legitimate part of your data science workflow. So I really care about helping grow these types of people in organizations. I consider myself one, so if you find this type of work interesting and exciting, I hope that you get from this talk that this is a role that we care about at our studio, and if you are doing this type of work, we'd love to speak to you about what you're doing and what your goals are and how we can support you. So like I said, I'll be talking today about automating the delivery of data products, and we consider data products Shiny applications, our Markdown documents, Plumber APIs, TensorFlow models, all the things that come out of your data science workflow that you use to communicate what your work is all about. So I want to talk about how you can keep these data products in production and then develop them or change them over time. So in software engineering, there are a different number of patterns that IT and engineers used to manage these products over time, to put new features into them. And if you have a product that's running in production, sometimes you may care a lot about making sure that it doesn't break, essentially. So production means a lot of different things to a lot of different organizations. And sometimes production means that you can just push button deploy a new version of your app. And if it works, great. And if it's fine, it's okay, because there's nobody using it right now. So you can roll back to a previous version. But if you care very much about keeping your app running all the time and making sure that it works, you need to think at a higher level about how to mitigate that risk of putting new features into your application or your piece of content so that you don't break things down the chain, or so that you don't break things for active users. So I've recently been getting into thinking about DevOps and the types of philosophies that help us wrap our minds around how to decouple pushing code changes from releases, which are exposing those code changes to your user base. So yesterday my talk was about application-based release patterns, so controlling your actual code to expose or hide these new features inside of applications. And you can find my slide deck, I posted it on Twitter and online. But today I'll be talking about environment-based release patterns. And the environment-based release pattern that I'll be talking about today is called typically a blue-green release pattern. And I'm going to describe it. Hopefully it makes sense in terms of these two Shiny applications. So as opposed to application-based release patterns, environment-based release patterns use the concept of multiple different environments. So different production environments running two locations of essentially what is the same application. So I have a production environment that we're calling blue and one that we're calling green. The blue one is actively serving user traffic. So users are coming to this blue location and they're getting this version of our Shiny application. The green is inactive right now, so no users are coming to green, which means that if we want to run a code deployment, if we're trying to push this new feature, we can use our production green environment as a staging environment. So even if these two environments are on our production server, one is sort of reserved for staging at all times, and one is reserved for production. Here. So once we're ready to actually release the new version of our application, all we have to do is switch which of these production environments are serving user traffic. So in this case, if I'm ready to roll out this version of the app, I would switch my user traffic to point to the green production environment, but keep the blue one to roll back for a period of time if necessary. So that's kind of like my catch, my safety net. If green doesn't end up working out, if it falls over as soon as we turn on the user traffic, I can, very quickly, hopefully, toggle back over to my blue production environment, which I know is working and stable. So this is kind of a long-winded version of everything I just said, but I wanted to highlight that the pros to this kind of release pattern, as opposed to what I talked about yesterday with application-based, is that it requires really no changes to the application code itself. So as opposed to feature toggles, where you're building in this conditional logic into the Shiny application code, environment releases just replicate your application. So you're making different locations on the production server where these applications live, and you have to manage where your traffic is being directed, but the code itself doesn't have any of that conditional logic inside of it. So if you were going to implement this, you could do it a number of ways for our various server products that we produce at our studio. You can also make this work if you're just using Docker or some other open source solution on the cloud or on-prem. But I'll be talking a little bit about how this looks in our Studio Connect, because that's the product that I work on the engineering team with. So on our Studio Connect, we have this concept of creating or associating a custom or vanity URL with an application. So I can assign a custom URL to this, in this case, a Plumber API, to say, all right, I want this one to be called Demo API. And that will allow me to then send users to that custom URL instead of this longer content ID-based URL. And that'll come in handy. So the idea here would be that I want to surface that single access point, that custom URL, and then I want to assign that URL to the original deployment location, then later assign it to a different location on the same server. So I can point my URL towards one app, and then when I'm ready to switch the users over to the second app, I just flip it and assign that vanity URL to a different application on the same server. Simple. But along with this, I have a couple of implementation recommendations. And the first one, the one that I really feel passionate about talking about, is Git branching strategies. So if you have come here today and you have embraced Git or some version control system, and you're only aware of committing your code changes to the master branch, I would challenge you or invite you to go on the internet later today or later next week and Google Git branching strategies. There's a lot of strategies to learn about. It can be overwhelming, but it really will open up a lot of different opportunities for you and really help you manage working with teams and working on these different types of projects. So one branching strategy that I've used in my past life is the sprint branching strategy, where you take a sprint branch off of your master production branch, and then off of the sprint branch, you can create sub-feature branches that you'll work on. So those feature branches then get merged into your sprint branch, and then the sprint branch will be merged back into master. So you're kind of creating this set of features that you're bringing into master every set period of time. The other feature that I want to point out is that you can manually publish to multiple locations. So this is my single Shiny application, and you see here in the corner that I've set up different publishing locations on the same RStudio Connect server called colorado.rstudio.com, which is our sales server. But I could, put one location on a production Connect server. I could put one location on a staging Connect server. I could put one location of the same app on shinyapps.io. Anywhere that allows push-button publishing from the IDE, you can associate an account and set up publishing from right here in my app development IDE. So that's really useful. But what's even cooler is being able to automate that. So I don't want to manually, have to manage all of the publishing of these applications. What would be cool is if I could automate sending my application to these multiple locations on demand. So that is what my demo is about today. I'd like to show get-backed content deployment on RStudio Connect. This is a brand new feature. It just came out 3 weeks ago. So I'll play my minute video and talk you through it here. So this is RStudio Connect, if you're not familiar with it. We have this new wizard for publishing from a GitHub repository. So all you need is the GitHub URL, and you drop it in, and then you can select your branch. So I have 2 branches, staging and master. I pick staging, and then as long as you have a manifest JSON file associated with a piece of content, it will auto-detect that piece of content and allow you to publish it directly to your Connect server. So here it is doing a deployment of my application. I can then open it up. See it here. And I don't have a custom URL specified for this one, but you can definitely set that up. And then if you go over to the input panel, you can see that this content was generated from a Git repo. And there's a repo. But you can also see, if I go back here a little bit, and here, that you see the branch associated with it, the directory, and then also that it will be checking for updates periodically. So anytime I commit a new change to this branch, it will automatically show me that change, deploy it for me here on my server. Nice. All right. Cool. Let's see if I can get back here. Slides. Okay, so the last piece here is managing how you're going to update that vanity URL. So as you may have guessed, 2 applications can't share that single vanity URL at any given time on your server, so toggling back and forth is a manual process that you'll have to associate some downtime with. In the future, it would be really cool if we could automate that with the RStudio Connect content APIs. So if you do have RStudio Connect, I would highly recommend checking out what the content API has to offer in terms of automating different parts of your deployment process and managing these pieces of content. We don't have the vanity URL exposed as an option in the Content API, but if you're interested in that, please come talk to me, because I would love to get some actual interest generated so that I can bring that back to our engineering team. So that's pretty much all I wanted to cover as part of my environment-based deployment patterns. I really like these. I think I'll be using them myself as part of my application deployment best practices. And if you're interested in learning more about how we think about deployments at our studio, please go to solutions.ourstudio.com. I've done a bunch of writing there, written a bunch of how-to guides. So if you're interested in this sort of content, check that out and let us know what you think. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? So you mentioned, oh, do we have one?
Hi, thanks for the talk. Is it possible to have a select group of users to switch over to the green app, so as like beta testers?
Yeah, absolutely. You can assign any content to have a certain set of be available to a certain set of users on your server. So if you wanted to set up a group, say just for your data science group or just for beta testers, assign those users and then associate the access to just be available to that group, then that's definitely an option.
Any other questions? I've got one. Blue-green deployment strategy. What other ones? You sort of hinted that there were lots of them out there, so I take it that you've had a look and then you chose that one.
Yeah, there are a bunch. I like that one because it's simple conceptually, so it's a good place to start. But I highly recommend this book that I show here, the DevOps Handbook, as a good getting started resource. If you want an even simpler on-ramp to DevOps and DevOps philosophy, there's actually a novel associated with this book called The Phoenix Project, which is sort of silly but sort of sweet and very cathartic to anyone who's experienced these IT and software engineering issues. So that's excellent, and this book goes along with it and lets you know how to implement the stuff that gets talked about in the novel.